All right. Hi there, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Today, I'm going to take you through a brief overview of Ableton as a program, just so you can get a feel for it before we get started and start to get excited about producing on this awesome DAW. So before we get started, I also just wanted to let you know why I have chosen to use Ableton as the DAW in this course. So the first reason is because over the years, Ableton has definitely become an industry standard. A lot of the pros use it because it is just such a great program for encouraging the creative process and enabling just a very smooth workflow. So yeah, it really helps with producers who maybe struggle with creative block and that kind of thing, because it's just so easy to do what you need to do on it once you understand the program. Another reason that I have chosen to use Ableton for this course is because it comes with a collection of amazing sounds and instruments, which once again really just helps with your creative workflow. So yes, with that being said, this doesn't mean that Ableton is the one and only program that you can use. It's just personally one that I really enjoy using, and I think most people enjoy using. And the great thing about it is once you know it and you understand it, you can apply the things you've learned in Ableton to any other DAW if you would like to experiment with other ones in the future. So that's why I use Ableton, and that's why I think it's a great program. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to open up Ableton over here. So I'm currently working with Ableton Live 11, and I'm also working on the trial version with you guys. So you can see here I activated my trial 9 days ago, so that means I've only got 81 days left to export and save my work. All right, so I'll just say okay. So this is Ableton. This is one of our two views that you have in the program. So this is called Session View. And if you hit your Tab key, it should take you to the other view, which is called Arrangement View. You can also toggle between these two views using these buttons. So that is for our Session View, and this is for Arrangement View. So Arrangement View is really great for building a song, and it encourages you to put together song structure, and you can add markers in for your verses, for your choruses, for your intros, all of that kind of thing. So this view is really conducive for building a song, whereas Session View is a really great view for kind of experimenting with ideas and that kind of thing. So what you do with Session View is you'll put in the elements of your songs in these little rectangles here, and then you can see these play buttons here. You can hit play. So you'll have your guitars, your drums, and your vocals all in this row, and then you'll hit play, and those will all play at the same time. And then maybe you want to add an extra element. So you've got guitars, drums, vocals, and you want to add your bass. So on the second row, you'll have your guitars, drums, vocals, and you'll add your bass. And then you hit play and your bass will be added. And it's a really great way to experiment with ideas before you maybe commit to putting them down in a full arrangement. So those are our two views, and that's how you switch between them. So next up, I'm going to take you through our tracks and the different types of tracks, and also our return tracks. So as you can see here, we have MIDI and we have audio. So these are our two different tracks that you can use in Ableton. These MIDI tracks will be used for, you probably guessed it, MIDI instruments and MIDI drums. And these audio tracks can be used for recordings. So maybe you recorded some vocals or some guitars or even drums. And so then you can put these live recordings into your audio tracks, or you'll actually record them into these audio tracks. And you can also put samples in these audio tracks. Then we have return tracks, which are on this side. So as you can see here, we've got reverb and delay. So if I click on these, you'll see down here that there is a reverb unit that has been put on this reverb track. And here there's a delay unit that's been put on this delay track. These are really cool because what you can do is if you've, let's say, recorded a vocal onto your audio track and you want to put a little bit of reverb on it, you can just send it to your reverb track using these knobs here. So that would be, I'd be sending a full signal to my reverb track, or if I wanted to send it to delay, I would send it to my delay track. So as you can see, A and B and A and B. So, and if you wanted to add another one, you would go over here and you'd say create, and you would say insert return track. And now we've got C. So C's popped up over here. So if we wanted to send something to C, we could also have the option of doing that. So that's how you create a return track. I'm just going to delete that one. If you wanted to create a few more MIDI or audio tracks, it's very similar to making your return tracks. You just go to create and you would say either insert MIDI track or insert audio track. All right, so that is how you create MIDI, audio, and return tracks. Then I just want to show you our master track. So this is our master channel. So everything that happens over here in these tracks and in our return tracks is all going to our master channel. And you will see that the signal will be coming through this meter over here. Cool. So that's all about our tracks. Then I'm just gonna take you through a bit of a channel breakdown as well. So you can see all of our channels look somewhat similar. We've already gone over our sends. So now I'm just going to take you through this section of our channels. So these big orange buttons here, these are our mute buttons. So if you maybe had something playing in this audio track here and you didn't want to hear it, you can just cut it there. If you have a whole bunch of stuff playing through all of these tracks, but you wanted to isolate a single track. So let's say you just wanted to hear this first MIDI track over here, you would then solo it. So this S stands for solo, and that would make that track just play on its own. Then if we have a look at this button over here, this is a button that allows us to play or record. So if you are recording into your audio tracks, you need to record enable the track, and then signal will run into this track. So you can see there, that's actually my microphone right there. So I've record enabled it. So if I were to hit record over here, it would start recording my voice onto this track. It's a similar kind of concept for our MIDI. If we had a MIDI instrument in here and we wanted to play and record it, we would just need to enable the play and record button. So another cool thing to note is this little icon over here that looks like a keyboard. So if we have a MIDI instrument on either one of our MIDI tracks and we wanted to play it using our computer keyboard, we would just select this track, we'd have our MIDI instrument on there, then we would record and play enable it. And then in order to hear it and use our computer keyboard to play that instrument, you would just have to have this icon enabled. All right, so now I'm going to move on to our sidebar menu. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail because we definitely will go through it as we are creating our own tracks, but I'm just going to give you a brief run through. So if we look over here, this is our wonderful sidebar menu. And this menu contains all of the sounds and instruments and effects that we're going to use to create some really awesome music. So if I just run through it briefly, we see here we have sounds, and we've got a whole list of different categories and sounds that we can use. We've got bass, we've got strings, we've got whatever your heart desires. So you can open up any of these and go through them and pick a sound that tickles your fancy. The same applies here for our drums. These are a bunch of drum sounds that we can use. Next up are some instruments. So these are kind of digital instruments that you can manipulate to almost create your own sound. We'll cover these in our synthesizer section of the course. These are our audio effects. So these will be your reverbs, your delays, your compressors, all of the things you're going to use to treat your different sounds and make them sound how you want them to. These are our MIDI effects. So they are similar to our audio effects, but instead of manipulating the audio file itself, they will manipulate the way in which our MIDI notes behave. Then we have Max for Life. This is an awesome tool you can use to create your own audio effects and instruments. Next up, we've got plugins. So these will be all the external instruments, sounds and effects that you maybe have downloaded off of the internet that you can then put into Ableton and use. And then these are clips, samples, and grooves. So these are a bunch of kind of pre-made either samples or MIDI grooves that you can use to help your creative process, or you can add those into your own music. And these are templates. So let's say you've created an Ableton session that you don't want to lose and you want to maybe use it in the future because you like the way it's laid out, then you can save that session as a template. Cool, so that's a brief overview of our side menu. So just before I continue, I just want to take you through a quick example of how you would load up a sound onto one of your MIDI tracks. So whether you want sounds, drums, instruments, audio effects, plugins, the same concept applies. So I'm just going to do the example with sounds. So once you click on sounds, all your options open up here, and you can choose whatever your heart desires, as I mentioned before. So I'm just going to go with some synth keys here. So I'll double click on that and it opens up a whole collection of synth keys I can choose from. So before I click on one of these so you can hear a preview of how it sounds, I'm just going to bring down my headphone volume so that it's not too loud. And then I'll just click on this and it gives you a cool little preview of how it sounds before you select it. So, alright. And then if you want to stop the preview, you just hit your space bar. Let me try the next one. I'm going to bring the level up a little bit. Alright. That's quite a cool sound. So if you want to scroll through all of these, you can also just use your arrow keys on your keyboard. So I'm going to go with this a soft chord sound. So I'll select, I want it to go onto this MIDI track. So I'm going to select that track and then I'm going to double click on the sound and it pops up over here. And then I just make sure that record enable is enabled and that my keyboard is on. And then I'll quickly just turn it down here. Yeah, and then I should be able to play it on my laptop keyboard. So that's just a quick example of how to add a sound onto your MIDI track. And then I'm just going to show you this bar at the top of our page here and just tell you what some of the things on this bar are because they are very useful. So over here, this will tell us the BPM of our session. So this session is running at 120 beats per minute at the moment. This is a really helpful metronome tool that you can put on and off if you'd like. And then these are our record and play buttons. And then one more thing here, this is a button that allows you to loop a section of your session if you're needing to just hear it on repeat. Maybe you're mixing it or you're trying to figure out a melody, so then you can loop over there. Lastly, I just want to show you our MIDI programming window. So there are two ways to get to this window. One of these is by selecting or double clicking on one of these rectangles here. And then you can see down here we have our MIDI window. So we've got a keyboard here. So we could essentially click around here and add notes into our MIDI window. So that's the same for instruments and drums, but we'll cover that in more detail once we get there. If you wanted to get to this window from your arrangement view, I'll just take you into arrangement view. a very similar concept applies. You just double click on one of these sections here and your MIDI window will pop up where you can program in your very own notes. Great. So that is just about everything in Ableton. I know it's quite brief. There are so many things that we can go into, but we will definitely cover a lot more in a lot more detail as we go.